Our chief whip has been in touch with the speaker, who indicated that he believed that the response would be in from the president soon, so we hope he'll meet the deadline today. But that doesn't have any impact on the impeachment process. That's a parliamentary process. And we're hoping very much that the speaker will set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the president as soon as possible.
As far as the president's response is concerned, what are you hoping to hear?
Well, I hope he will abide by the recommendations of the public protector. I hope he'll do the right thing, apologize to the nation and commit to paying back the money he owes. But it's been such a long time, so many months of obfuscation, of sometimes blatant misleading statements and interferences in her investigation. It's hard for me to believe that he'd suddenly find his conscience now. But I hold out hope. That doesn't change the responsibility that falls to Parliament. Whether he apologizes or not, whether he agrees to pay the money back or not, Parliament needs to establish whether as an institution we were used to spread misinformation to the public. The Speaker must establish whether the President has broken the law, violated the Constitution, and then in the final analysis we must decide whether he's fit to remain in office.
All right. So you've submitted evidence to Max Sisulu's office. Yes. Can you outline what that is?
Yes, well, the Public Protector deals with a number of questions that President Zuma responded to in Parliament to try and establish whether or not he was aware of the upgrade or whether he lied to Parliament in his protestation that he wasn't aware about it. And some of the questions are answered in her report, some of them aren't. But from the information we have in the report, we and the DA believe that there's actually evidence that the President deliberately misled Parliament, particularly on the issue of his bond. He didn't answer the Public Protector's questions about that, and particularly on the question of whether he knew who was engaged in the upgrade, how much everything was costing, and what was being upgraded. There's a lot of correspondence that the Department of Public Works has submitted to the Mail and Guardian newspaper and to the Public Protector, showing them the President's intimate involvement in the upgrade, his requests for changes, his requests for certain plans to be abandoned, and requests for additions, and indications that he's satisfied or not satisfied with the progress of the upgrade. And all of that correspondence has got numbers attached to it. It's got quotations, it's got money. And so the President's claim in Parliament that he'd never seen any correspondence, that he didn't know about the upgrade, even now in Gugulethu when he said, how can I be expected to pay the money back when I didn't ask for it, to me is massively misleading given the fact that this evidence shows he was intimately involved.
So disingenuous with the truth, do you not think that impeachment seems to be a massively grave step?
I think it's appropriate. Parliament is an oversight authority. It cannot conduct its work if it cannot trust that the executive, when it comes to Parliament, is going to be truthful and is going to provide it with accurate information. It can't be a place for the spreading of lies, misinformation. We've already seen Minister Nxesi trying to bring a bogusly classified report to Parliament to try and make it seem like it was more serious than it was, and it turns out that that classification was false. So we have a responsibility to assert Parliament's position as the third arm of the state. Ministers must recognize that if they provide false information to Parliament, if they lie to the House to cover up the fact that they have broken the law or violated the Constitution, there's going to be consequences. And the President should be at the apex of upholding that standard. If he comes to Parliament and deliberately misleads MPs, using the platform as a way to lie to South Africans about the fact that he was not involved in the upgrade to his home for over 240 million rand, then the sanction of being fired and never being allowed to serve in public office again, I think, is very appropriate.
It needs 2/3 majority in Parliament. A lot of people would say, rightly, that this is a waste of time.
It's certainly not a waste of time. We've never been deterred by the fear that we won't succeed from doing the right thing. This is the right thing to do. Parliament has a duty. It elects the President. The South African people don't directly elect the President. Parliament does that on their behalf. And Parliament cannot willingly go into an election where President Zuma is the presidential candidate and know that he's going to be presented to it again next term and say, well, we won't investigate this allegation that's been made by a Chapter 9 institution. We're just going to pretend it didn't happen and hope no one notices that we're re-electing to office somebody who may not be fit for purpose. I think that if the ANC makes a decision to vote the party line and keep the President in, then it must be answerable to the voters. But that shouldn't deter Parliament from doing its job. And Parliament and the ANC are two very different things. So this is a constitutional motion that has huge implications. We take it very, very seriously. It's not a gimmick, it's not a stunt. This is a reflection of the seriousness of the charges against the President, and we believe wholeheartedly that if he's guilty, he should be fired from office.
You mentioned the voters. How are you expecting this Nkandla saga to play out on election day?
I don't know, but my feeling has always been that if the ANC presents President Zuma as the presidential candidate, then the South African voters have a right to know everything about his term of office. Of course, the ANC will go around during the election and campaign on all of its successes in office. But the huge effort that the government has gone through to cover up Nkandla, the ministers who have lied to Parliament, who've engaged in disingenuous behavior, who have misled the public, misled other independent institutions, it's just a massive scale cover-up, all in an effort to protect President Zuma and his inner circle. And for the president to not be held accountable for those actions at the ballot box because of this cover-up would be a mistake. So we think we need as much information about Nkandla to be available to the South African voters so that they can make a decision. And then it's up to the South African people to make that decision. But as a parliament, if our institution has been misused, if rules have been broken, if the law has been broken, and most critically, if the executive has lied in the House deliberately to cover up this information, then that's something we have an obligation to investigate and to implement consequences.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com